Welcome everyone. This is a presentation on history of linguistics. It is believed that the study of language or linguistics started with the Sanskrit grammarians of ancient India. Panini was an important figure or an important linguist of ancient India. He is known as the father of linguistics. Another important figure is Katyayana. Katyayana wrote commentaries on Panini's most important work, which is entitled Ashtadhyaya. Another important figure is Patanjali, who wrote Mahabhashya. It was a commentary on Sanskrit grammar. In the Western world, it was Plato and Aristotle who studied language in depth. There was also Dionysius Thrax, who produced the first systematic grammar of the Western tradition. He studied morphology. Morphology is the study of words. There was also Apollonius Dioscorus, who studied syntax or grammar. Now, what is traditional linguistics? Now, these are some of the features of traditional linguistics. Traditional linguistics focused on written language rather than spoken language. അവർ പ്യൂരിറ്റി ഓഫ് ലാംഗ്വേജിനാണ് ഫോക്കസ് കൊടുത്തിരുന്നത്. അതായത് അച്ചടി ഭാഷ എന്ന് നമ്മൾ പറയുന്ന ആ രീതിക്ക് എങ്ങനെ എഴുതണം എന്നുള്ള പ്രിസ്ക്രിപ്റ്റീവ് സ്റ്റൈൽ ഓഫ് ലിംഗ്വിസ്റ്റിക്സ് ആയിരുന്നു ട്രഡീഷണൽ ലിംഗ്വിസ്റ്റ് ഫോളോ ചെയ്തിരുന്നത്. They did not worry about, or they did not study how language was used or spoken by the speech communities. They were only interested in how it was written by the great writers, and they prescribed rules as to how one should use language in its pure and correct way. So they focused on written language rather than spoken language. They focused on the correctness and purity of language, and traditional linguistics was prescriptive. Means the works of ancient grammarians prescribed rules regarding how a language should be used and be kept pure. Then another important feature of traditional linguistics was it was based on meaning. Meaning is what decided language, as opposed to structural linguistics, about which we'll be studying very shortly. So everything was based on meaning. They believed that syntax, or how words are written in a sentence, followed logically from meaning. They also believe that the grammatical framework of classical languages can be used to describe any language. So they described, or they prescribed, they studied these classical languages like Sanskrit and Latin, and they thought that they can apply the same rules to all the other languages. Modern linguistics, as we know today, started in the 19th century, and they in the 19th century the focus was on historical linguistics. We already studied what it is. They focused on the diachronic study of languages. They studied languages, and they tried to find out relations between the languages, and they trace the history of these languages to a common language. So that is what is called comparative philology. They compared the features of these languages, and they tried to find out the ancestor of these languages. So they found out that all modern languages descended from ancient languages. For example, the modern day languages like French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, all these languages evolved from Latin. Ancient languages like Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, Celtic, Germanic evolved from a common ancestor, which is now called the Indo-European language. We already talked about it. they were interested in finding out or reconstructing the proto languages, the original versions of modern day languages. And they also believe that language change is universal. It happens everywhere, and it is continuous, and it will go on happening. It will happen regularly. In the 20th century, we have structural linguistics. Now, structural linguistics, they accepted all languages, and they also gave importance to the spoken varieties of languages, not just the written varieties. They accepted the spoken varieties of languages. They considered language as a system of systems. Like, they broke down language into sounds, and sounds make up words. Words make up a sentence, and sentences give you meanings. So they divided each of these systems into separate units, and that is why they say that language is a system of systems. Like, phonology is a system of sounds. Morphology is a study of formation of words. Syntax is the rules of grammar, or the arrangement of words in a sentence. And semantics is the study of meaning. So all these different systems form together, they form language. So this is what structural linguists were interested in. They just described a language and nothing else. They did not prescribe any rules. They decided to study a particular language, and they talked about how these particular systems, the phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics of that language work, and that's it. They did nothing more. So structural linguistics is descriptive and synchronic. As I said, they were not interested in the ancestors of the languages they studied. They just wanted to know how a particular language is used by communities in different places. Descriptive linguistics just analyzes how a language is used by a speech community, and that's it. They do not prescribe any rules. They do not say that you should use language like this, you should talk like this, you should write like this. No, they never prescribed any rules. They just described it. They just studied, and then they came up with their conclusions. That's all. They rejected the use of meaning in describing grammatical categories. They broke down language into different units, but that was not based on meaning. They said meaning is not what contributes to the setup of a language. Now, in the latter half of the 20th century, linguists like Noam Chomsky came up with the cognitive approach to studying language. So structural linguists were only concerned about describing the language, how language is formed through sounds, words, etc. Whereas the cognitive linguists, they were also interested in what is happening inside the brain of a person when he or she uses language. Where does this capacity for language come from? Why do we use certain words? So they started questioning all these things. So they rejected the structuralist view that the function of linguistics was simply to provide a classification and terminology to talk about language. അത് മാത്രമല്ല ഒരു ഒരു ലിംഗ്വിസ്റ്റിൻ്റെ ജോലി. ഫോണോളജി, മോർഫോളജി എന്നൊക്കെയുള്ള ഡിവിഷൻസ് ഉണ്ടാക്കുക മാത്രമല്ല ഒരു ലിംഗ്വിസ്റ്റിൻ്റെ ജോലി. A linguistic theory should be able to capture the psychological aspect of the knowledge of language. How do we know all these words? Why do we use a particular word for a particular thing and not any other word. So ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള deeper questions they asked, and they try to explain why things are the way they are. Why is the grammar of this particular language like this? They always questioned uh, uh, why languages are or why words are used in a particular manner, and why grammar of a particular language is used in a particular manner. And they said that the business of linguistics was to construct a theory which would explain and predict facts regarding language. Yes, so the duty of linguists was not to just provide terms and classifications, but they have to construct a theory which would explain and predict facts regarding language. So that this is about the a brief history of linguistics.